Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. I was actually becoming very impatient when I interact with the kind of audience like you, because the future of this world belongs to you. So I'm very happy to even listen to the introduction as to why this center is here, that you are here to study poverty and oppression, and also to learn the Christian means of social engagement. So you make my work very easy, because that is my pet subject. And I wish I could just sit around and we interact instead of you listening to me for more than the minutes that I have, because I think you are the ones with all this information. So when I talk, it shall be you who is talking. And I'm just trying but to air, I think, much of the vision and the dreams that you must dream for this world. I also want to acknowledge, although I have not been sent, that I'm happy to be in this campus, because I remember back home we also have a Nazarene campus in Nairobi. So I think I am very much at home, because your sister campus is there, and I know the chancellor, the professor, and I have a nephew of mine who studies in Nazarene. So I feel very, very, very comfortable. So coming to the subject of the time, I want us really to study poverty and oppression. And I really want us to be able to come up with a way of how to engage. And it's very, very important that we want to get the inspiration from our faith, which is Christianity. And I start off by saying, indeed, the issue of the situation in Africa today is very, very critical, and that's why Jubilee USA has invited us for this speaking tour, because of the already accepted problem universally, both by the North and the South people, that indeed debt, it is not only illegitimate, but it is also immoral, unethical, and a question that we must address. And I say this because the situation that we are in, or poverty, like you want to say, for me, it's a created scarcity. And somebody told me the other day that I'm not very clear on that. I want to be very clear. What I am saying, poverty is man-made. Poverty is a misery created by us. It's a misery that we can deal with. It's a misery that people must deal with now, because they needed to deal with it yesterday, but they have not done so. And it is on that note that the issue of debt becomes very, very critical, because the debt burden that the so-called developing countries, or least developing countries, are experiencing in the kind of impoverization majority of the people live in, is as a result of that debt burden. So the debt chains majority of the people of the world to very unacceptable, inhuman, undignified life. And as Christians, we must rise up with a prophetic voice and a prophetic role to give service to see what we can do about it. Throughout the Holy Book, which we read, the Bible, if you look at what the prophets, for example, Prophet Isaiah, go to Micah, the issue of justice is clearly articulated and said on what we should do about it. So, blessed are those that are going to rise up and say no to these injustices. For that's why Christ Jesus died at the cross, to give us the way to be able to reclaim our humanness and to reclaim our identity as God designed it when He created us. For we are told, and I believe, We are all created in God's image, which we must manifest. And God's image is not want, it is not fear, it is not indignity. And that is what poverty is doing to us today. So, I am trying to make a submission and say, what therefore is the genesis of this creation of poverty? And I am saying, many facts are out there, many reasoning and many positions which are clear have been brought to our appreciation and our understanding, both by the so-called victims and also both by those that can be held responsible to the situation of the human suffering today. And that's why at the All-African Conference of Churches, I coordinate the Ecumenical Millennium Development Goals campaign. I hope you are familiar with that, what the Millennium Development Goals are all about. And this is because when we were turning to the new century, the 21st century, goodwill people of the world stood up with the Jubilee campaign and were inspired by what the book of Leviticus teaches us on how we should handle ourselves after certain periods of lives to put sense into our lives and how to correct and, so to speak, what Jubilee is all about. And there was that very intensified campaign that was launched from the UK, spearheaded by faith people on the question of drop the debt, cancel the debt, and the debts are not acceptable. And throughout the 1999, the whole world was on the Jubilee campaign. But after, as we closed the year, the debts had not been cancelled. But the voice and the spirit was still there. That's how we came up with Kenya Debt Relief Network to coordinate those organizations that believe in social and economic justice. And that's how we have continued to connect ourselves. In Africa, we have African Forum for Debt and Development. We are part of Jubilee South, which is also part of, which connects the campaigns in Latin America, in Africa, and Asia, and also coordinates with campaigns like Jubilee USA. So what I am saying, global action towards poverty is already ongoing, and it's upon you to find out where do you come in, because you need to find a means of engagement. And where we are today, we can only but celebrate because that has not been in vain. For out of that engagement, in the year 2000, the biggest attended UN United Nations Summit by the heads of states met in number of 189. They say it was the greatest United Nations General Assembly that had a good attendance. And in that meeting, the heads of states made a declaration, which is referred as the Millennium Declaration. And from the Millennium Declaration, they came out with a minimum of 8 points as commitments on what needs to be done between 2000 and subsequently by 2015. The issues of those commitments should be addressed. And those commitments were to be seen whether they have started being effective this year, September 2005. And there was that meeting in the UN in September to evaluate the Millennium Commitments and the Millennium Plus 5. So what were these commitments? One, to eradicate poverty and hunger. So, like you who want to study about poverty, the heads of states acknowledged in 2000 that it's important to deal with poverty and hunger. Millennium 2, what did they say? They said that it is very, very important that universal primary education for both boys and girls be there for all, because it's their right and it's the duty of the heads of states to make sure that that happens. And goal number 3, they said there needs to be redress of our relationship, the question of gender equity. And in your introduction, I did see you are also concerned about the issues of gender. So the world also knows something needs to be done about our relationship between men and women, between girls and boys, between regions, between continents and the whole globe. So the issue of gender equity is a priority. Goal number 4, they said we cannot afford to have children dying before they see their first birthday. So child mortality was critical. And goal number 5, maternal mortality was critical. Goal number 6, diseases like HIV and AIDS, malaria, and any other diseases, we have no excuse. We must be able to combat them. And goal number 7, it was important to also appreciate that there is a relationship between us and our environment, people and planet. So the issue of sustainable environment is also critical. And after looking at all those 7 goals, which in essence refer so much to the world that I come from, Africa, or the so-called developing world, for once, the heads of states from the South were able to rise up and say, wait a minute, the 7 goals are only relevant to us, but they cannot be delivered if we do not redefine how we act upon these issues collectively as people accountable in charge of the world. And goal number 8 stated that there has to be partnership in development. For you, because you are students and you are the one to investigate and come up with proper, clear way forward, I put a challenge to you to unpack what is the relationship between goal number 1 and goal number 8. Because poverty and hunger is a manifestation of that relationship that must be redefined in goal number 8 on how partnership and development is going to be organized. And that's why we are in this speaking tour, because one critical issue that cannot allow partnership in development take root to address those commitments is the issue of debt. Unless the debts are cancelled, it will be the same story, same business, same questions, same unworkable measures and remedies. We have had poverty reduction, poverty alleviation, poverty eradication, poverty elimination, all these issues. And I want you to take the mind of a surgical, medical, expertise. You only treat and operate when it is very clear on what the condition is. Tell me, and I challenge you, how are we going to deal with poverty when we don't know whether it's poverty eradication or poverty alleviation or poverty eradication? These issues, poverty reduction. So, for once, the world must stand up critically to acknowledge and accept what is really the problem so that we deal with it. And that's why we are on this speaking tour hosted by Jubilee USA, and that's why Jubilee USA is fronting the Jubilee Act, so that the real diagnosis of the real problem can be stated clear without we are the only people who can take that lead. For we know the truth sets us free. And that's why I'm not afraid to state poverty is a created scarcity and therefore needs to be addressed with honor to create plenty for all. For the whole question is access and distribution of resources. And currently, we have a paradigm where we have domination and control, spearheaded by the very unequal economic relationship, which is sustained by the World Bank, the IMF, and WTO. And that's where the problem is. And until we can be able to say so and work out a solution from there, we will continue talking about poverty. You will remain here studying about poverty. You shall graduate and you will not be able to address the issue other than becoming a PhD economics or a PhD in justice. But the real demonstration on the ground to see that the issues that are critical to people's lives will not be addressed. So what am I saying? I am saying that the debts are illegitimate, the debts are odious, the debts cannot be paid, and actually, taking even the position of Jubilisa, we don't owe, and we shouldn't be paid. If anything, we are demanding reparation. There is that kind of discourse. And this is because, for example, in Kenya, for every $1 we get, we pay back in $3. So how can you tell us then that we are poor when we get $1 and we pay in $3? And this is because of the arrangement and what the World Bank and the IMF has designed in the name of the aid that we get. Aid with the conditionalities. And the aid we have gotten right from the time we got independence in the 60s to the 70s, and in particular I would wish you to study what happened economically globally in the 70s through the conflicts of the petrodollar created from the position the OPEC, that is the oil producing countries, took in order to have those petrodollars and in order to disburse them with the manner they disbursed them to the developing countries. And now, how they have turned around to be big debt burdens and chains on our economies. So, the whole question now is to be truthful and sincere that the paradigm that we are living in is a paradigm that is threatening everybody. Because it's a paradigm that prescribes to making profit by any means necessary at the expense of life. And as we speak now, the paradigm does not know anything else other than making profit and profit. And that's why, through the Washington Consensus that have continued to advise on what structural arrangements should be done to combat poverty, prescribed by the World Bank and to be seen to be acted upon through the supervision of the IMF. The whole debate now is that privatize everything, and they have even privatized water. So when you privatize water, what are you saying? You are privatizing our own life. A few people have control and have say on what our lives should be. So what I am saying, we must begin to see, and that's why it's very important for the citizens of the United States, through this kind of centers and through Jubilee USA, to begin to see what sustains the relationship of the government, the relationship of the government to the multinational corporations or the companies and the banks. Because that triumvirate is what creates poverty for us. And we might not be able really to engage on our own. We are trying where we can. But like you are saying, you are studying poverty. I'm also saying that it has become a problem for the world, and we must be able to engage with it. And through the Millennium Development Goals commitments as a framework, as we were coming to the September evaluation this year, the campaign intensified and built on what Jubilee campaign had done. And in UK, they stood up with Make Poverty History, the white band you are wearing, and I am wearing. I mean, the white band Jubilee USA can provide you, which I am wearing. This we have made it in Kenya. This is made by the UN Millennium Development Campaign. And as we were consulting on what position the civil society, where the churches are going to bring to the UN, we were able finally to build a global platform as global call to action against poverty. And that is a momentum that is taking all good-willed people and all spirit that is standing up against this misery of humanity in the name of poverty. And if you followed what was happening in Gleneagles, Scotland this year, you did see how people were out there, an experience like Live 8. And I had the opportunity to address and respond the position the General Secretary Kofi Annan was taking to the 8 men at Gleneagles. So I did experience, and I did say that indeed the position of making poverty history is here, and we should not miss the opportunity, because God has allowed us to be the agents of this social transformation. And subsequent to that, we then went to the UN, and I had the privilege to have given the keynote address on this position. And exactly what I am telling you is what I stated, that we cannot accept the situation as it is. And if the leaders are not waking up to do something, then the people of the world will have to find out what other institutions and what other platforms are going to be able to engage on this issue. Then the process is still going on, and there is a remarkable event in Hong Kong where WTO will be meeting, and the spirit will still go there. My concern is after that, are we going to stop, or what will happen thereafter? And as scholars and as students, you therefore find that there are so many issues where you can put your creativity and energy and your intellectual blessing that you have to help the people of the world to see the light and to understand these issues. Finally, the demands are very clear. Aid without conditionalities. Cancel the debts. Just trade. And reform of governance, right from local to continental to global. Because governance is skewed. Governance does not allow, for example, a declaration like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights be respected because it's interfered with. You can attest that your President Bush decided to go to war in Iraq in spite of the Security Council of the United Nations saying no. And as far as we are concerned, the issue of cancelling debts is not negotiable. It's a question of political goodwill if partnership in development has to be there. Because also a demonstration was done very clear that when they needed to go to Iraq, there was enough money. And even when they needed to have their interest in Iraq, the debts of Iraq were cancelled. So what we are talking about is the question of political goodwill. Political goodwill to rise up honorably and honestly to deal with the suffering of the majority of people of the world. And I think I stop there, and if you have any questions, I shall answer. Thank you.
Ardi for short, and he joins us from Jakarta, Indonesia. Ardi is currently the coordinator of the Koalisi Anti-Utang, which is the anti-debt coalition of Indonesia, and it's comprised of fisherfolk, peasants, and other solidarity and farmer and other civil society and social justice organizations in Indonesia. And Ardi has been active with the KAU, or Anti-Debt Coalition, for the last few years since its inception. And they talk about and demand 100% cancellation of their debt, much of which is odious and was contracted under dictators. So without further ado, James Ardi.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here in front of you, and then we'll share a few on the poverty, on economic development, on what they call globalization. For a country like Indonesia and so many countries in other world, the word of development became very popular after the Second World War. And then this idea of development comes with the concept how to put money from out of the country coming into the country to financing development. But the fact not as simple as that. They say there is a money coming from outside of the country to into the country, coming outside of the country, going into the country. The fact is, through this development issue and the strategy of financing, they do transferring what is economic production and the economic capacity. They do export to the country who have foreign debt, through the debt. They send the country with the goods and services. They do like technical assistance. They do like sending us the goods like computer, car, or anything else that we need to build infrastructure or to serve public services. So I think from this situation, it should be make us aware there is already wrong in the way to reach the goal of development, which is economic growth to make people more welfare. Because that's only transaction between a few people have a capacity for production in the lending in the creditor country, and connection with a few people who have in power and also who have capacity in doing business in the debitor country like Indonesia. So this development only have a benefit for a small circle for the people who have capacity on economy and who have a power in the government, and then generate all of them to profit by themselves. So for me, it's more clear after we hear what after Wahoo explained about illegitimate debt. So there is way is illegitimate debt going on. I'm going more specifically for illegitimate debt. For example, we have a project they call computerized in Indonesia for school. Okay? For this project, that's me. Let's say this project going to the US government as a bilateral loan. Through this project, that's me, and that's not me. The government of United States owe some money to Indonesian government to make Indonesian government able to build their own computer industry. That's not mean at all. That's the meaning is the government of United States have an agreement with the computer industry in United States, and then send their computer to Indonesia. So let me ask you, is there no bribery? Is there no abuse of power? Is there an accountability process? And then why, when we call for debt cancellation, so many people asking how you insurance this debt cancellation can go to the people, can go for the necessary things? The first, we already get in trap with the development term. The second, we get in trap with the term of the transparency and accountability, which is in the meaning of the imbalance of position, unequal position. And I think it's clear, we are in the injustice life. We are in an injustice life. So it's no wonder if now so many countries have a problem with the debt, and they are already going to debt trap, which is the situation. They still borrow a few of money, but at the same time they're supposed to pay more. Let me make it simple. For this year, Indonesian government, for example, let's say, borrow about $5. But at the same time, the government of Indonesia is supposed to pay $50. So there is minus 45 US dollar. So where does the money come from to make this payment done to the creditors? The first, government increased domestic tax income, which is the impact is the increasing of the price for the product and services in the country. The second, government reduced their spending for the local interest, especially for basic services like health, education, subsidy, and everything else. And you know what is the reason to cancel this all of basic services spending? World Bank, IMF, and I think all of the G8 countries always say there is a corruption there. There is a transparent process there. There is not effective spending for the government. So the government need to cancel that spending from the state budget. Okay, there is not enough. The people are supposed to pay for high price, and then supposed to pay for paying more expensive for education, for health, for other basic services. There's not enough. There's more. The government supposed to sell state-owned company. They call it privatization. But you know what happened? When Indonesia government doing privatization, the state-owned company not buy by the private sector, but buying by another state-owned company from the other country. So what's going on? They call it privatization, but they do business between government to take over like a huge business for public services and public utilities. That is not enough. The government is supposed to issue like a government bond at domestic market and international market, which is interest rate going commercial, same like bank interest rate. You know, it's already completely perfect. We are just waiting for the deadline. There is no space for make something else because it's already in trend. So I think this situation inspires us. That's why we call for debt cancellation and stop the new borrowing. Why we put it together? If the government still make new borrowing, that means the government supposed to pay for the old debt. And to make government able to pay this debt, that means the people will be more suffer in the country. I would like to inform you, after 32 years or 40 years, we do development. What happened in Indonesia? What happened in the ability of our state budget spending? I will start with the social issue in Indonesia. 1 in 2 Indonesians have uneven chance of falling into poverty this year. That means 50% from the people of Indonesia potentially going to be a poor people. The second, 1 in 3 Indonesian children under 5 years old are malnourished. That's what they call what they call a success of development in Indonesia. The third is about 1 in 3 Indonesians have not complete primary school. If they are not complete primary school, what kind of job that they can get, and how much salary they can get, and how much proper life that they can have. And then 1 in 3 Indonesians have no access to safe sanitation. 1 in 3 Indonesians have no access to health services. 1 in 4 Indonesians have no access to safe drinking water. Even we have no access to safe drinking water, right now, World Bank still insists to push water privatization services in Indonesia. They do this to give the government the loan. The name is Water Structural Adjustment Loan, amount about 350 million US dollar. This requirement to liberalize water services in Indonesia and make private sector able to run water services as a business commodity. So the people who have no money don't think about to get water in Indonesia. For the people who have no job and then have no salary, have no income, don't think you can get the water. That's what can be happen in the future in Indonesia soon. And then 1 in 5 of Indonesians are unemployed or work less than 7 hours per week. And the last, I think 1 in 10 of Indonesians are not expected to live to 40 years old. What is the report of Millennium Development Goal Progress saying? Until 2002, only 46.8 children can finish basic education. So the rest, they going to the street looking for money, looking for food, and then also they have a serious problem about the security of the life. Anything can be happen. There is sexual harassment, there is what we think, drug, and so many problems can be happen to this kid. And so many kids going to the street because the people they are not able to go to the school. And so far, only 68.4 mothers to give birth have an access for health services in Indonesia. And mother mortality is 307 every 1,000 birth rate. And the same year, 35 baby dies, and 46 from 1,000 children under 5 years dies because of bad health services. Even for the people welfare, that's not good enough. Unemployment always increasing every year, and also poverty line, people living in the poverty. Why this situation happen in Indonesia? There is very related what is the government spending policy. With the government spending policy, we have a huge money coming from domestic tax income, but 40% going to debt payment, and less than 10% going to health spending, and less than 10% going to financing for education. So no wonder if we have serious problem with the social and economic situation in Indonesia, so how we solve this problem? I think it's very clear. If you are realize there is a human rights covenant as an international covenant, and a part of the human rights covenant there is a economic, social, cultural right covenant, which is saying the same thing like MDG is saying as a commitment for Millennium Development Goals. In Indonesia, we also have constitution mention these things. So now I think it's time for us to make it clear. This debt not help people in the country who have indebted. And then this debt is illegitimate and odious. So this debt needs to cancel without conditionality. 100% cancellation without conditionality. Because if we go into the high-peak scheme, PRS initiative, and the other mechanism that has been provided by the World Bank, IMF, and the other multilateral institutions, that means the people living, the quality of life of the people getting worse. Because IMF and World Bank always impose something like privatization, reduce government spending on health, education, and other public services. So we need more than what they have. Even there is high-peak, ceiling, or anything else that's not working. You should remember, Germany have one good opportunity for debt cancellation through the Marshall Plan. And it's working. Germany become one of G8 countries now and ruling the World Bank and IMF together with the US government and the other G8 countries. But you're supposed to be aware. IMF, World Bank, and the other multilateral institutions ruling based on how much share did you have in this institution. And you should be aware, the government of the United States is the bigger shareholder in the institution like IMF and the World Bank. And nothing can be delivered without authorization of the United States of the government. I don't know. You have an idea to asking your government about, is there an accountability process to give the loan to Indonesia? Is there an accountability process to authorize what is World Bank lending to the country? And the other question, like you have to ask in indebted countries. I think it's very important for us to think and take an action to solve this problem first. And then I think after that, we're going so easy to reach the goal, what we call debt cancellation for the better human being, human life, and the justice, economic, and social situation. Thank you very much.
I could ask our speakers to come join us again up front, if that would be all right. And for those of you that might have questions, we're going to take a few more minutes here to answer those. You might just want to sit down up front here or work with the stand as well. I'll just kind of moderate a little. And first of all, thank you very much for coming such a long way, both of you, to our little spot of San Diego. I maybe have a question to start off this conversation, to start off the questions today. I'm kind of curious for both in Indonesia and in Kenya. Let's talk about those nation states that you're most familiar with right now. What are the signs of grassroots movements, of people's movements in support of such big and what are often seen as abstract developments, like global debt relief? How do people locally connect to the movement, I guess is the basic question. And we'll let Artie sit for a minute if that's okay, since he's just come down from the podium. So could you tell us in Kenya, for example, what do the grassroots movements look like?
Thank you very much. That's why the Kenya Debt Relief Network is a very important platform in Kenya. because right from its inception after the debts could not be cancelled in 1999, our mission has been very, very clear that we want to promote economic literacy so that the ordinary people understand and appreciate the issues that are held within the debt question and relate to their everyday life. So there is a debt movement, if I may say so, to work out on that economic literacy through what I would call debt clinics. And the churches are very, very instrumental in that, especially through their justice and commission programs, especially the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church. And we also utilize how communities have organized themselves through women groups, through youth organization, footballs, like in one of our big slums, there is a football campaign to win the cup of debt cancellation. And of late, it has become such an experience that all others from other slums are identifying themselves, and such kind of football matches are beginning. So, where we are now, I would say that we are building connections and connecting the blocks of grassroots or people's movement, like you were saying. The slum people with the engagement of dislocation of shelter, the small farmers, the landless, the entrenched people, and now we even have a very vibrant an organization that is defining trade unionism. The high school teachers, all graduate teachers and above, did not have any union way of negotiating for their own livelihood. And many of them find themselves with nowhere to address their issues. So there is the new Kenyan post-primary teachers organization to go along with the old one of NAT, Kenya National Union Trade Unionism. And they are coming up not now to argue about wages, but to argue the skills. You have the skills and one has a right to utilize those skills. Because the issue of wages is beginning to appear like it's not any debate anymore. For many people are losing their jobs each time. So, and they're moving so fast. So what I would say for Kenya, and I am an active participant in the whole process, we are connecting those dots of those movements, and we are very active in the World Social Forum process. I sit in the Africa Social Forum Council, and we are hosting the World Social Forum for 2007, when the World Social Forum come to Africa. And as I sit now, there is the Southern Social Forum taking place in Zimbabwe, and we are trying to work out from East Africa to the South, even connecting activities at the borders to create awareness as the people move from East Africa to Zimbabwe, and as people move from South Africa to Zimbabwe. And we are looking forward to continue connecting those dots regionally, and by the time we come in January for Procentric Africa Social Forum in Conakry, we shall already have let the whole movements now begin to have the face for the real actors. For I am not the actor of the Civil Commons. I'm just but a custodian of them, but they will have now to take over. So, like in my country, we have a very vibrant one slum called Huruma, and they have their own Huruma Social Forum, where they have been able even to engage with the city council and are able to reclaim the land that they have made their settlements. Their slogan is that they only want to own where they stand, they don't want anymore. And they have been able to come up with alternatives of settlement, which has even beaten the habitat design of the UN. So I want to bring hope, and that's why we are in this tour, to globalize what I call hope, and to globalize the other world, which is possible, like the World Social Forum says. And now it's no longer another world is possible. It is actually in making, and I am a testimony of that. I don't know whether I've answered.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Artie, in Indonesia, what does the grassroots movement look like? People's movements.
Yeah, for the reason of the current situation in Indonesia, we already knowledge where is the problem coming from. So that's why my organization always also performed by 2000 to consolidate the issue from so many sectors, talking about the poverty, about the labor right, about women, about children, education, and so on. Put it together as a part of anti-debt movement in Indonesia. So far, we already what has been done in our work is we already set up the system to disseminate information and then produce policy analysis related to the debt issue, and also doing like a public education for the like a grassroots organizer in so many places in Indonesia. So from this activity, the outcome is how to get Indonesia free from debt domination through debt cancellation and stop the borrowing of the government. But we also working to the parliament member, and actually so far there is quite good result, because there is a progress in the meantime. In the beginning, during the IMF letter of intent in Indonesia with the government, during the time of government of Indonesia have a contract with the IMF through letter of intent, we have a good we have something interest, or not something interest, we do something to put this contract ending soon, not continuing again. And we got the support from the parliament, and they have a what do you say, the parliament decision, and mentioned in one letter, who have an official number and anything else. So this letter saying the government of Indonesia is supposed to ending the contract, the cooperation with the IMF soon, to make Indonesia have a sovereignty to their own policy on economic and social area. And for now, our government, our parliament member has been start to thinking about make regulation for the government to have authorization for every single foreign loan that they make. So not only like before, because it's only coming into the state budget process, that mentioned some amount for new borrowing, and then we got the parliament member have authorized on that. But for now, there's not enough. They're calling for each foreign loan agreement should be authorized by the parliament member. And also there is a initiative from the parliament member to ask for debt cancellation or debt reduction or more accountable debt management, which is how to reduce Indonesia dependent on foreign debt. And I think I'm glad if we can have many information how to roll, how the country have a rule on their government spending or the government borrowing strategy or management. But of course, we are not thinking how to continuing the government make new borrowing even there is a transparent or accountability process, because that borrowing itself bringing corruption into Indonesia and bringing for poverty into Indonesia. So that's why we need to stop. But I think for immediate action, absolutely we need your input for that. I think it's necessary for us to make more difference that has been happened, like in Qatar, Ecuador, or anything else.
Okay. Questions from the audience, please. Start here and then in the back corner.
A common theme that I've noticed is that you say that essentially borrowing money, or when other larger countries such as the United States and European countries lend aid, they do it with attachments and restrictions. You say that that's not good for your economy, but like in the United States, we use a capitalist economy, and it works very well for us. We borrow, we lend, and we invest, and that's how our whole system works. So how do you explain to the American public that this system isn't going to work in these countries? How do you get America or the United States and certain countries in Europe to understand that the way it works in the Western world isn't going to work with these so-called developed countries?
Who would like to take that one?
Yeah. In my presentation, I said the international financial architecture is skewed because it's unequal on the principle of domination and control. I substantiate that by saying, when we get aid, for example, the strings that we are talking about are conditions that you are given. I will give you this money, but you are going to invest this money in this way. And those conditions are only favorable to the creditor, because they will say, for example, I give you this money, then you invest in building dams, for example. The dams will have to be constructed by expertise from the USA, for example. The machineries are going to come from the USA, for example. The feasibility study will be done by consultancy from the USA, for example. And facts are there that money does not leave Washington. It is transacted there. Or what we see is that investment, which at another time it's not even an investment that is favorable to our country. Like in Kenya in the 70s, we took a lot of loans to invest in the dams. 5 years ago, those dams could not generate enough electricity. And we were forced again to take more loan to import more obsolete technology in the name of generators. And that's why when you put the lenses of justice, that's the only way you can critique that arrangement, because it's not beneficial and it is not to the advantage of whoever gets the loan. Because whoever gets the loan just becomes a consumer of what they don't need. We grow what we don't need for export, and we import what we don't need because it's imposed on us on that principle of the aid conditionalities. So that's why we must put the moral question and the ethical question to the question of debts. And that's why we must not allow this discourse to be taken from the economic point of view. You can see I'm hesitant to use the economic argument, because I cannot argue with economists from Harvard and from Cambridge. They will have all their facts and their economic justification, like you are saying, it works in the US. But it works in the US, but with the Katrina hurricane, I hear many people could not move from the disaster because they did not have the capacity. They were not with enough mobility to get away. Only those who could be able to get away went to safety. Those are the issues we are talking, and the question of justice is the guiding principle. So the problem of aid with conditionalities is that one power feels more powerful at the expense of the other. And that is the arrangement that there has been. That is what is threatening our sovereignty, like my friend Adi was saying. And that's why for us who believe that we have a right like every other citizen of the world, we are standing up to say aid with the conditionality is wrong. In any case, the creation of that wealth has been done by all of us in the world. Like I said, $1 given to us, we pay $3. Why should I not just pay back that $1? So I pay $3 because I sustain the arrangement of the richness of the creditor. And that's where the questions are coming in. So the whole question is to put the human face to this argument and to seek where justice is. Because the same argument you are putting in WTO, World Trade Organization, they shall argue that you have arrived and the trade is liberalized and you can take your goods anywhere. For heaven's sake, how can you compete if the playing ground is not level? So all what we are calling is a leveling of the playing ground. I don't know whether I have succeeded in answering your question.
I would like to add some more on your question. Why the system works in the US and why not working in the other country? Yeah, the system working and financing by the faith of the system in the other country. So, like I explained to you, how we can generate our economic capacity if our spending financing for US economic surplus to make a US economy take benefit from the transaction of government spending through the debt payment or debt borrowing, the new borrowing that government made. So it just looks like you're going to work in one company, but you have an idea. Someday you will have your own company. But when you're going to work in this company, you already borrow some money for your preparing for work. At least you need clothes, you need everything to go work properly, and then to make yourself able to work. And then after you get this work, and then your wage is low, very low, but you still have need that job. And then you have a problem how to eat, how to get your daily needs for life. Then this company has a store, and then you go into the store, you borrow some more. And then how you eat? The company have a cafeteria or something to eat, a place to eat, and then you go in there. And they keep counting on your loan. And then when you have your salary in the end of the month, that's already finished to pay the all of your loan. And then you keep continuing like that. So I think there is a process make it not possible to have your own company someday, even in all of your life, in whole of your life. So you are already putting in the system to make you indebted and then not able to come out, going out from this situation. So I think that is the simple explanation that I can give for answer your question. Thank you.
There's a question in the back here, please.
Yeah. So if the legislation passes and the developed countries end up canceling the debt, what happens then? Where does money come from to continue in aiding the development of countries like Kenya and Indonesia?
If I'm not wrong, you're asking about where is the money
Well,
going
because
from?
if you're saying that the way that aid is given now is skewed and fundamentally unjust, then how do you see it working in a way that development can continue? Because if the capital is not there and the nations still need it, where does it come from?
Yeah. Well, I can say for case of Indonesia, at least we need to change the way to make success indicator for development. Not more using GDP or economic growth or anything else, but more concrete going to the people. From government spending, how many children can go into school? From government spending, how many people can go into the hospital to get health services? From government spending, how many people can have a job with the proper income? From government spending, how many people in Indonesia can have their own house. I think that is more important and more meaningful than we just talking about the GDP or economic growth. Because this GDP things, very, very myth, right? That's not real. There's an illusion. Because this GDP can make only by few people, but in the way to counting as generate and then you divide it by average, so with so many people not working, we still can judge they have an income. For example, in this room, maybe only me and Wahoo working and have an income about $1 billion US. So this $1 billion US will be divided by all of us in this room. So that means this mechanism not real. This is an illusion of the economic growth theory. Am I wrong? Huh?
So Wahoo in Kenya, for example, what happens if debt is canceled? Then how does that shift things for what's possible in Kenya?
And this is what I am saying. Let us not see this question of debt in terms of figures of monies. Let's see them within the manifestation of our own lives. Let's put the human face on it. And the whole question of the human concern is the power relationship. So if the debt are cancelled today, it means those who hold the strings to the debt will have to forego the power they hold on others. They shall have to respect our sovereignty as a nation. And those who are the tools to experience to sell our own sovereignty, if I may use that word, will have to forego their value in decision making, and the citizens shall reclaim their sovereignty and will be in charge of influencing decision making. That's the whole question. The whole question is not that I give you 5 shillings and you pay 10. No. The whole question is I give you 5 shillings and you pay 10 because you do not do anything that benefits in your nation. So it's the whole question of the paradigm of power relationship. That's all what it means. And that's why it becomes very, very difficult to argue the discourse in economics. And for me as a social justice activist and economic justice, I'm not interested in what the banks are doing there. Because the banks do what the political goodwill wants to be done. And the whole question, like I have said, the paradigm we live in is of domination and control, which is unjust. And we must wake up to it. And when it is unjust internationally, when Bush can walk to any part of the world and do what he wants and he cannot be questioned, then President Kibaki in my country walks anywhere in Kenya and does what he wants and he cannot be asked. Then my boss in my office walks inside the office and does whatever he wants and nobody can ask him. Then my husband in my house just wakes up and does whatever he wants and there is nothing I can do. Then I wake up and do anything to my children and nothing can be done. And the children wake up and does anything to the dog or the cat and nothing cannot be done. So it's the ideals, it is the principles, it's the culture which is not befitting the civilization that we are claiming we are in. The United States of America, you founded your nation on very clear philosophy and principle. Life, liberty, pursuit for happiness. If you are truthful, it is not even happening even here in the United States for all citizens. It is thrown out of the window and nobody wants to talk about it. You want to see suffering is just in the third world. I am saying I don't prescribe to that. Suffering is universal, just like not suffering is universal. There are people privileged globally, there are people very unprivileged globally. And that is the question, because the paradigm as we know today has gone very skewed and almost berserk, because even the issues of concern that threaten all of us, like climate change, there is the Kyoto Protocol, which your government has refused even to sign to, in spite of scientists saying that the world is threatened climatically. So these are the things that we are talking about. And the issue of debt is just but a key to open the Pandora box in order to see what is wrong and what needs to be done. And to put now in the academic argument, like my dear daughter over there asked, that's why this campaign is very clear in saying we must have aid with no conditionalities. And not just aid with no conditionalities, more aid. 30 years ago, the developing world agreed to be paying 0.7 to aid. Very few countries honor that. And the second one is the question of cancelling the debts, so that we regain our sovereignty and we can be able to plan our own lives in our own way in a dignified manner. And the instrument which puts this question into trouble is trade. And we are not talking about anymore about fair trade. We want just trade. And that's why the whole focus now, it is how we must deal with the framework of the WTO. And finally, it's acknowledged and acceptable that governance has to be redefined at wherever we are. So those four concerns are the concerns of the campaign, from Jubilee to Millennium Development Goals to Global Call to Action and to whoever wants a just world. And that's why the World Social Forum is very, very clear and categorical. They have rejected and they are saying no to the neoliberal paradigm. And that's why we are talking about another world is possible. We must redefine, we must build, we must reconstruct from the ashes, because we are actually within the ashes, especially us from the south.
We've run short on our time, and we promised to get you out of here at 12:30. There'll be time afterwards, more informally, for a few questions. But let me first of all say thank you to our two presenters.
1 minute.
One minute.
Somebody observed that the issue of illegitimate debt and odious debts is not very clear. We don't like going and
The
leaving
difference
this out.
between
What is a legitimate
legitimate debt and
and
odious
odious
debt.
debt? If it's clear, we can stop. If it needs substantiation, you can be going on after we leave. But it's an issue that needs to be understood well.
Please, quickly.
Illegitimate debt and odious debt. Just speak.
Oh,
Simple, brief and simple.
brief and simple about illegitimate and odious debt. Yeah, that's just something that has been borrowed by the government, but not using for the people benefit, and then it just generates profit for the people who have an access to the power, even in the creditor side or debitor side, which is like what I told you before in the beginning of my presentation. So this illegitimate debt and odious debt not supposed to pay by the people in the indebted country. It should be cancelled. So if we're talking about the illegitimate and odious debt, there is no compromise. We only can say about debt cancellation. No debt relief, no debt reduction, no anything else. As a responsibility of the creditor, they must be doing debt cancellation without conditionality.
So particularly that odious debt then is that, if I hear you right, is that debt which comes and is not clearly and demonstrably of benefit to the majority of people? Is
For
that-
example, the debts that was incurred during apartheid, as the South Africa have a right to pay.
Yeah.
The debts that was incurred by Mobutu Sese Seko of Congo, is it right to pay? The debts that was transacted by the creditor and the gap between governments, and it never reached to the program, to the project because facts are there. The money is ended up elsewhere. Do the people have a right to pay? Because it's the people paying.
Yeah. Otherwise, in this situation now, every year, World Bank also have a document. They call it Country Asset Strategy. This document has been make a frame for the country for what for they can borrow to from the World Bank. So this borrowing not creating from the needs in the country. So it's already controlled by the World Bank.
There's a great documentary. If you want to see this in really short form, interviews with World Bank and IMF officials, Stephanie Black's Life and Debt. If you haven't seen that yet, we have it in our media center, in the media library. It's a very quick and easy way to get into some of these more complex economic, social dynamics of international debt. This is a conversation that should go on for weeks, right? And as you know, these are complex issues, and we thank you for bringing your stories, for your heart, for your passion. I'd also like to thank Jean O'Leary for helping to organize. If you just wave to everybody, Jean there, who's our regional coordinator for If you're interested in knowing more details, I sent around a sign-up sheet. It should be floating around on an orangey piece of paper or a salmon piece of paper. Please sign up before you leave, or come by the social offices over in Culbertson. Thank you for coming today.